For the last part of our discussion for the day, we're going to wrap up with the chairs of our leadership committees. So as Mitch opened the meeting, thanking our corporate members are really the mainstay of our organization. They help sustain us throughout the year, not only from their membership dues, but also from the sponsorships that they give us for a variety of the activities that we pursue. Our leadership committees are volunteer committees for people who are interested in getting more involved in the industry and taking more of a leadership role in some of the areas that are really necessary to move the industry forward in New York. So we have Joe Bolano, the Managing Director of Colliers Healthcare and Life Sciences Group, who is currently co-leading our Institutions Committee. Chris Horch, who you met on the ad earlier, the Associate Partner of JB&B, who heads the Life Sciences Committee. Chris Stoddard, Partner at Ennead Architects, who runs the New York City Subclusters Committee. Erin Stolz, Environmental Health and Safety Manager from Triumvirate, who helps to run the Regulatory Committee, and Brad Todd, Life Science Project Executive for Shawmut Design and Construction, who helps on the planning side. And we couldn't do our work without them, so we thank them. And they're here just to report on their activities for the year and tell you a little bit about what they'll be doing next year.
Should I start?
Yeah,
okay.
go first.
Hello, everyone. As Nancy said, Joe Bolano. I am with Colliers Project Leaders. We are the owner's rep project management arm of Colliers International. Mostly responsible for managing the New York office and wearing my second and really my most important hat, which is the healthcare life science work that Colliers does. So I don't know if we want to go through and introduce each other, and then we'll tell a little bit about our committees.
Sure. Chris Horch with JB&B Consulting Engineers. I am a mechanical engineer by discipline, but dabble in all things MEP-wise. We are institutional and developer life science design engineers, and we also work in the academic and commercial office space and other areas, but my focus is really on the developer and institutional life sciences.
I'm Chris Stoddard with Ennead Architects, Associate Principal, and I lead our commercial group. Ennead, we have a 60-year history of practicing architecture here in New York and around the world. With that, we have longstanding history of designing labs, especially here in New York, and I'm part of the New York Subcluster Committee.
Hi, everybody. My name is Erin Stolz. I work for Triumvirate Environmental as a Senior Environmental Health and Safety Manager. Triumvirate Environmental is an environmental services firm. So we provide environmental health and safety solutions, predominantly in the life science and healthcare space here in New York City. So that can include assistance with regulatory compliance from the build, moving towards maintenance with different regulatory codes that exist federally, state-based and locally. More recently, we've been really working to partner with more commercial real estate ventures to help in the build and to provide some guidance and insight that we've seen as challenges with some of our clients previously when they did not bring in an environmental health and safety partner.
Great. Good afternoon. My name is Brad Todd. I'm a project exec with Shawmut Design and Construction. If you're not familiar with us, we are a national builder. My role at Shawmut, working out of our New York office, is to help grow our life science industry here in New York City and throughout the Northeast Corridor through New Jersey and Philadelphia. Thank you.
Great. So a little bit about each of our committees. So our committee, which is the institutional committee, is really a combination of two committees that came together not that long ago, made up of the academic committee and the healthcare committee. So I chaired the healthcare committee with Rose from Novak from Gensler, and Raquel was running the academic. The three of us now kind of co-chair the committee. And so we had two really mission statements that were developed by each of the committees and have come together to really work on one mission statement. I think it's important that anyone who's on our committee and feels that this is a committee for them, that they have some sense of drive of what the ultimate goal is. We, of course, always support Nancy's work in the larger committee, but we really want to bring value. We don't just want to meet as much as we like each other. So much of our committee is, the conversations in recent times have been about merging those two mission statements and what we bring to it. So we want to really create a knowledge base that informs the academic research world and draws from them the work that they're doing, the challenges that they see in the world of life science, and a bit about the real estate component of it that many really don't understand because they're not in that world. If you're a researcher, if you're in an academic institution doing some great research, that's your focus. That's your mission statement. It's not necessarily how that intersects with the real estate, the built environment, but ultimately you're going to end up there. And so we really want to understand from them a bit about their world. And on the healthcare side, we really want to also understand what drives the research for them. As you know, most of the research comes from an outcome or an event on the healthcare side. So what brings them to the table and understanding a situation, a disease, or something that's important enough for them to invest in the real estate, the research component, and how do they bring that to the academic world, and how does that come together? So we've had some great conversations about all of that. Our committee meets fairly regularly, although recently less because we've been joining the two committees on Thursday mornings. We're respectful of the fact that people have other jobs, so we try to meet around 8:45 or so for about half an hour on Teams. We have had some conversation, and we just had one in the green room, which isn't that green, by the way, about having in-person meetings. I think there's a huge dynamic. We all agree to that, just to meet in person. So our committee has had some conversation about meeting once a quarter in person at someone's office. The ability to have that dialogue without figuring out who's on mute and who's not on mute, I think is really important. And so we're pushing hard now after this symposium to get back into a routine where we meet regularly. We bring some purpose to the committee, hopefully some deliverables back to Nancy and the greater group. So if you're interested in it and you want to partake, we're happy to have a conversation with you. And if you need to, just sit on one of the committee meetings. And if it's something that sort of rings to you, then we can have a further conversation.
Thanks, Joe. So I'm on the Life Science Committee. I co-chair it with Doug Gonzalez. And this will be my 4th year, I think, on that committee. We've had a couple of lives as we've gone through. Life science is a very broad terminology, as we are here. And the original mission from 6 years ago when New York City Builds BioPlus, and I can say that still, right? It was New York City Builds BioPlus then, was founded, was about educating the developers and educating the city about life sciences and what it really meant and what it really took to build and install and then occupy. And so our committee originally started with that mantra in mind and that mission. And so we started with the education side of things and the build side. So we put together a flyer for the developers of what your building could be if you wanted to redevelop it into life sciences and what attributes you would need on a very high level in order to even think about it being considered. And we did the same thing with the tenancy side, incubators coming out of that lab, that bench, and they need more space and they're getting serious funding, but they don't understand the construction, the occupancy, how to get into a build, what all the funding would be and things of that nature. So we actually put together a pair of flyers for the developer and for the incubator or scientists coming out of their initial programming and into larger builds. And so that was relatively successful. So we continued the mantra there and we started data collecting and we collected all kinds of information on buildings that were being retrofit or built out of the ground for life science purpose and occupancy. We put together data in terms of the neighborhoods and the specs for the MEP design, structure, things of that nature. And so we have a database now of the major buildings in New York City for that is available for tenants or other folks just to get an idea of what comparisons you can have on the building side. And so this year we decided that we've taken a hard look at the actual construction and actual attributes of buildings and things of that nature, and it was time to revamp the committee and kind of change the mission statement and go back to our soul, why we're here, the education portion. So for the next year, the mission is going to be about educating, and it's going to be educating the high schoolers, the college students, the recent grads, and things of that nature, and all things life science, and really pushing that next generation and pushing that agenda that life science and science technology is rooted in New York City. You don't need to go anywhere else other than New Jersey or Westchester and other areas in the surrounding, but you don't need to go to Boston. You don't need to go to North Carolina. You don't need to travel away from our epicenter. So the next iteration of this is going to be outreach and education from that standpoint of all the great things that the life science community within our area has to offer, and hopefully spur that next generation of scientists and things of that nature. So if you're interested in that kind of thing in education, we meet on Wednesdays. It's usually once a month in the afternoon. Just like Joe said, we're revamping a little bit, but we want to start getting into in-person and then start pushing that mantra and getting out in front of those other folks.
Great. I'm part of the New York Subcluster Committee, and the zeitgeist of our committee is to understand the greater complexity of the New York City life science ecosystem, and it builds upon a project that we started at Ennead a number of years ago, pre-COVID, where we started to map the life science ecosystem across New York City to understand how some of the several projects we've designed in the city fit into that ecosystem. And it resulted in what we call the New York City BioArc. And the BioArc starts up at Montefiore and Einstein, goes into Columbia Medical Center, Manhattanville, East River Science Park, then it goes down what we call Academic Alley, down First Avenue, where we have all the great medical research institutes, down to NYU. Then it goes across to Hudson Research Center, with spokes going out to Long Island City, Southern Brooklyn, where all those great incubators reside, and then over to Jersey City. And what our committee has done is kind of taken the study to the next level to really understand neighborhood by neighborhood, subcluster by subcluster, and see, number one, what institutions are attracting tenants in development, what are the unique attributes to each neighborhood. New York City is so diverse. Beyond its research institutions, we look at adjacent tenants. We're looking at tech. Again, Susan spoke really good to the synergy and unique nature of New York City between tech and bio-life science, access to transportation, amenities, things that tenants look for when they want to start their company here in New York City. So you could have a company that does a lot of work with medical institutions. They would reside on that First Avenue corridor. You could have a company that is drawing a lot of executives or talent from New Jersey. They may reside and focus at West End Labs, and so on and so forth. So we meet on a regular basis. We were supposed to meet today. Unfortunately, we had this event. And it's a good group of people. We also talk about what's happening within New York City in terms of the moment, development, what the city is doing to help advocate for more life science and a more robust platform for life science in New York City. I reside on the Real Estate Life Science Advisory Board, which is a real estate task force put together by the EDC, again, to make it easier and remove obstacles for life science development in New York City. And we've also been advising on some of the upcoming code changes. So there's a lot of good, strong momentum, and the city is working really hard to establish this very strong platform to encourage companies to come here, grow and thrive, and be a part of our ecosystem here in New York.
Thank you. So I sit on the board of the Regulatory Committee. And so what that looks like is providing a mission to allow for more clear and concise guidance for all of the key stakeholders in this mission, right? So making sure that there's clarity on what's necessary, instructions to provide guidance to accelerate life science in New York City and otherwise. So just kind of high level, we do meet on a monthly basis. It's not always as structured as Thursdays at 8:45, but it does happen every single month. And we were able to get together in person at the Metropolis group this summer, which was phenomenal. Good to put, a face and personality behind everyone on the team screen. So that was really insightful. I think we got a lot of momentum from that group. So what we're looking for always in the regulatory committee is different points of view, different expertise, folks that have different insight on what we can do to push forward that momentum from a regulatory standpoint. As was mentioned, the zoning changes that were in draft and I believe published this past Monday, it has established for more clarity for real estate developers to think about what they can and cannot do. So specifically, it removes some of the more specific structure around zoning, so removed language like medical laboratory, dental laboratory, and created a more broad category, which is newly housed in use group 7. So we can speak to that a little bit if you have any follow-up questions during the reception. But again, the goal is to provide more of a playbook for developers so they understand those limitations as well as the allowances for the building code, the fire code, ventilation, plumbing, and otherwise. Other initiatives we're working on in the regulatory committee is helping to streamline the process for certificates of occupancy and certificates of fitness for the FDNY. The process right now, not always, but can take between 4 to 6 months. That's a huge timeline, especially for startups. And so we're looking to expedite that. In doing so, we're bringing in a partner from the FDNY, Brian Cardasco, who's going to be joining one of our meetings before the year's end. So that's really exciting. We're going to speak to the pain points that we're all experiencing there and hope to improve upon the efficiency. And finally, other kind of items that have come up, utilizing the Cure building with Deerfield as kind of a case study for a real success, not just from the commercial real estate standpoint, but moving forward with regulatory goals, bringing in a lot of key partners, regulatory EH&S partners, but also filling that space with tenants, with the up-and-coming incubator space, Advancium Health Network. So really exciting kind of case study there. And finally, a lot of things that are coming up from the startup biotech space include sustainability initiatives. So working towards initiatives like My Green Labs, which has come up with a couple of our key stakeholders.
Great. So I sit on the membership and planning committee. I've got my cheat sheet here so I don't forget names, which is co-chaired by Laura Gallo and Bill Brody. We've got a pretty wide spectrum representing different areas of the industry on our committee. Katie Nielsen, Priya Shah, and Daniel Maldonado. As I look around the room today, I did see a lot of familiar faces, which was good, but I'm also excited to see a lot of new faces. So I would encourage you all, wherever your role is, join our organization. Help us all grow this industry in the New York City metro area. We usually meet every second Wednesday of the month. Like you say, we've been on the steering committee recently, so we have to get those rescheduled. But if you see me in the reception or some of the other people I mentioned on the committee, please come talk to us. We would welcome you with open arms. We've also been starting to move our committee meetings in person. We were able to host our last one at Shawmut's new office space on Madison Avenue, and I'm always up for any excuse to bring someone in and break bread with us and to tell us each about our businesses and help us all grow our businesses.
So as you can see, we could talk about this all day, but we're keeping you all from what we really want to be doing, which is having conversations with each other. So unless there's any questions, Nancy, we'll turn it back over to you.